The shotgun blast echoed across the valley as Marcus wiped blood from his split lip, staring at three women on horseback who had just shot his prize bull dead in front of his ranch house. The eldest, her long black hair braided with silver threads, lowered her smoking rifle and spoke in accented English. "This land belongs to the Apache. You have 30 days to leave." Marcus had inherited the 2,000-acre cattle ranch in Arizona 3 months ago from his uncle, a man he barely knew. After losing his job as an accountant in Phoenix, the inheritance seemed like divine intervention. Now, watching his bull's lifeless body sprawled in the dirt, he wondered if he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. "Ladies, I have legal documents proving ownership of this property," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady despite his racing heart. "My uncle bought this land fair and square 20 years ago." The woman in the middle, younger with fierce dark eyes, laughed bitterly. "Your uncle bought stolen land. This valley has been our people's sacred ground for over 300 years. Your government papers mean nothing to us." The third woman, barely out of her teens but carrying herself with warrior-like confidence, spat in the dust near Marcus's boots. "White man's papers built on Apache bones." Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool October morning. He'd read about land disputes in Arizona, but never imagined he'd be caught in the middle of one. The ranch represented his only chance at a fresh start after his divorce, and bankruptcy had left him with nothing. "Look, I understand your concerns, but I can't just walk away from everything I have left," Marcus said, gesturing toward the modest ranch house and barn. "This is my home now." The eldest woman's expression softened slightly, but her grip on the rifle remained firm. "My name is Elena Yazzie. These are my daughters, Maria and Rosa. Our great-grandmother is buried in the hills behind your house. Our ancestors hunted deer in these meadows when your people were still crossing the ocean." Marcus ran his hand through his brown hair, a nervous habit from his corporate days. "I'm Marcus Sullivan. I'm sorry about your family's history with this land, but I paid taxes, insurance, everything legal. I can't just abandon my investment." Maria, the middle daughter, urged her horse closer. "Investment? You see dollar signs where we see sacred earth. This is exactly why our people can never trust yours." The tension crackled like electricity before a desert storm. Marcus noticed how the three women positioned themselves strategically, blocking his access to both his truck and the house. They'd clearly done this before. "What exactly do you want from me?" Marcus asked, his accountant's mind searching for a negotiable solution. "Leave," Rosa said simply. "Pack your belongings and go back to whatever city you came from." Eleanor held up her hand, silencing her youngest daughter. "There might be another way. Our tribe has been fighting the state for years to reclaim this valley. If you were to voluntarily transfer ownership to the Apache Nation, we could compensate you for improvements you've made." Marcus felt his last hope slipping away like sand through his fingers. "I put my life savings into this place. The compensation you're talking about wouldn't cover half of what I owe." "That sounds like a white man's problem," Maria said coldly. The standoff stretched on, neither side willing to back down. Marcus studied the women's faces, seeing generations of pain and determination etched in their features. At the same time, he thought about his empty bank account and the fresh start he desperately needed. "Give me time to think about this," Marcus finally said. "I'm not saying yes, but I'm not saying no either." Elena nodded slowly. "You have until the next full moon, that's 28 days. If you're still here after that, we'll take more direct action." As the three women rode away, their horses kicking up clouds of red dust, Marcus stood alone next to his dead bull, wondering how his quiet retirement plan had turned into a potential war zone. He had no idea that this confrontation would be the beginning of the most challenging and transformative period of his life. The next morning, Marcus drove his pickup truck into the nearby town of Cedar Creek, population 853. He needed supplies and, more importantly, information about his unexpected visitors. The general store owner, a weathered man named Pete, looked up from his newspaper when Marcus walked in. "You must be the new guy out at the Sullivan Ranch," Pete said, extending a calloused hand. "Heard you had some visitors yesterday." Word traveled fast in small towns. Marcus shook Pete's hand, noting the firm grip. "News travels quickly around here. Elena Yazzie and her daughters don't make social calls," Pete continued, ringing up Marcus's groceries. They've been fighting for that land since before you were born. Your uncle had run-ins with them too. Marcus felt his stomach drop. My uncle never mentioned any land disputes in his will. Pete chuckled, but there was no humor in it. Tom Sullivan was a stubborn old coot. Figured if he ignored the problem long enough, it would go away. Guess he passed that problem on to you. What do you know about their claim to the land? Well, they're not wrong about the history, Pete admitted, bagging Marcus's purchases. That valley was Apache territory long before Arizona became a state. The government relocated most of the tribe in the 1800s, but some families never left. The Yazis have been fighting legal battles for decades. Marcus thanked Pete and loaded his supplies into the truck. As he drove back toward the ranch, he noticed a black sedan following him at a distance. When he turned onto the dirt road leading to his property, the sedan continued straight on the main highway. Paranoia or legitimate concern? Marcus couldn't decide. That evening, as he sat on his porch watching the sunset paint the desert mountains purple and gold, Marcus heard the sound of approaching horses. Eleanor appeared alone this time, her rifle secured in a saddle holster rather than pointed at him. "Mind if I water my horse at your well?" she asked, dismounting near the front gate. "Help yourself," Marcus replied, curious about this unexpected visit. Eleanor led her horse to the old stone well and worked the hand pump. "You've been asking questions in town." "I'm trying to understand the situation," Marcus said honestly. "Pete told me about your family's history with this land." "Pete's a good man, but he only knows part of the story," Elena said, allowing her horse to drink from the metal trough. "My great-great-grandmother Ayana was born in the cave system behind your house. When the soldiers came to force our people onto the reservation, she hid in those caves for 3 years." Marcus listened intently, beginning to understand the depth of the connection these women felt to his property. She raised 4 children in those caves, hunting rabbits and gathering desert plants to survive. When she finally emerged, the government had already sold this land to white settlers. She spent the rest of her life trying to get it back. "That's a powerful story," Marcus said softly. "But it doesn't change the legal reality of my situation." Elena's dark eyes flashed with anger, then something that might have been respect. "At least you're honest about your position. Your uncle used to threaten us with lawsuits and sheriff's deputies." "I'm not my uncle," Marcus said. "I'm just a man trying to rebuild his life after losing everything else." For the first time since their confrontation, Eleanor's expression showed a hint of sympathy. "What did you lose?" Marcus found himself opening up to this stranger in ways he hadn't expected. "My wife left me for her personal trainer. Lost my job when the company downsized. Filed for bankruptcy last year. This ranch was literally my last chance at starting over." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, studying Marcus's face in the fading light. "Life has a way of bringing people together when they need each other most." "What do you mean?" "Maybe you losing everything and ending up here isn't coincidence. Maybe it's an opportunity for both of us to find a solution that works." Before Marcus could ask what she meant, Elena mounted her horse and rode away into the gathering darkness, leaving him with more questions than answers. The following week brought an unexpected development. Marcus was repairing a section of fence when a white government SUV pulled up to his house. 2 men in suits got out, one carrying a briefcase and the other a folder thick with documents. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm Agent Davidson from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. This is my colleague, Agent Torres. We need to discuss your property situation." Marcus set down his tools and walked over to meet them, his heart sinking. Government involvement rarely meant good news for individual landowners. "What can I do for you, gentlemen?" Agent Davidson opened his briefcase and pulled out several official-looking documents. "We've received a formal complaint from the Apache Nation regarding your ownership of this property. They're claiming it was illegally acquired and should be returned to tribal control." "I have a clear title and deed," Marcus protested. "I've done nothing illegal." "We're not suggesting you have," Agent Torres interjected. "But there are federal laws regarding Native American land rights that supersede state property laws. We need to conduct an investigation." Marcus felt the walls closing in around him. "What does that mean for me?" "For now, nothing changes," Davidson said. "But I'd advise you not to make any major improvements or investments in the property until this matter is resolved. The investigation could take months, possibly years. After the agents left, Marcus sat on his porch steps feeling defeated. He couldn't sell the property with a federal investigation pending, but he also couldn't afford to maintain it indefinitely without income. The cattle operation his uncle had left him was barely breaking even, and now he couldn't even be sure he'd owned the land long enough to see a return on any investments. That evening, Maria Yazzie appeared at his gate on foot, carrying a canvas bag over her shoulder. "My mother sent me to talk to you," she said without preamble. Marcus invited her onto the porch, offering her a glass of water, which she accepted gratefully. "The federal agents came to see us too," Maria said. "They want to interview our family about our historical claims to this land." "I suppose that's good news for you," Marcus replied, though he felt no bitterness toward her personally. Maria studied his face carefully. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Another arrogant white man who thinks money gives him the right to take whatever he wants. But you're just sad." Marcus couldn't help but laugh at her blunt assessment. "Thanks for that ringing endorsement." "I didn't mean it as an insult," Maria said quickly. "I meant you seem like someone who's been hurt, like you understand what it feels like to lose everything important to you." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge in the clear desert sky. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said eventually. "Sure." "If you get this land back, what will you do with it?" Maria's eyes lit up with passion. "We want to establish a cultural center and educational facility, somewhere young Apache people can learn traditional skills and connect with their heritage. The caves behind your house are sacred to us, but they could also be a place of learning." Marcus found himself genuinely interested in her vision. "That sounds like a worthy cause." "You really think so?" "I do. I just wish there was a way to make it happen without destroying my life in the process." Maria was quiet for a long moment, then reached into her canvas bag and pulled out a thermos and 2 cups. "My mother made coffee. She thought we might need it for a long conversation." As Maria poured the strong, aromatic coffee, Marcus realized this was the first normal human interaction he'd had since arriving at the ranch. Despite their conflict over the land, he found himself enjoying her company. "Tell me about your life before this," Maria said, settling back in her chair. Marcus found himself sharing stories about his corporate career, his failed marriage, and his dreams of a simpler life. Maria listened without judgment, occasionally asking thoughtful questions. "You know what's funny?" Marcus said as they finished the coffee. "I came here looking for peace and quiet, and instead I've found myself in the middle of a centuries-old conflict." "Maybe that's exactly what you needed," Maria suggested. "Sometimes we think we want one thing, but life gives us what we actually need instead." "And what do you think I need?" "Purpose," Maria said without hesitation. "You've been drifting since your life fell apart. This situation is forcing you to stand up and fight for something, even if you're not sure what you're fighting for yet." Her insight surprised him with its accuracy. Marcus had been going through the motions of living since his divorce, but this land dispute had awakened something in him he thought he'd lost. "What about you?" Marcus asked. "What do you need?" Maria smiled sadly. "To prove that our family's sacrifices meant something. My great-great-grandmother died believing this land would be returned to our people someday. I need to honor that belief." As Maria prepared to leave, she turned back to Marcus with an unexpected proposal. "What if we could find a solution that gives both of us what we need?" "I'm listening." "What if you didn't have to choose between keeping the land and doing the right thing? What if there was a third option?" Before Marcus could ask what she meant, Maria disappeared into the darkness, leaving him with a glimmer of hope he hadn't felt in months. If you're enjoying this story and want to see how Marcus and the Yazzie family resolve their conflict, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Also, drop a comment below telling us what you think Marcus should do: fight for the land or find a way to work with the Apache family. Your engagement helps us bring you more compelling stories like this one. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Marcus was feeding his remaining cattle when he heard a car engine approaching. A dusty pickup truck pulled up to his house, and out stepped an elderly Apache man wearing a traditional turquoise necklace and a weathered cowboy hat. "You must be Marcus Sullivan," the man said, extending his hand. "I'm Joseph Yazzie, Elena's father and the tribal elder for this region." Marcus shook the old man's hand, noting the strength in his grip despite his advanced age. "Mr. Yazzie, it's an honor to meet you." Joseph's weathered face creased into a slight smile. "My granddaughters tell me you're different from your uncle. They say you listen instead of just talking." "I'm trying to understand everyone's perspective," Marcus replied honestly. "Walk with me," Joseph said, gesturing toward the hills behind the ranch house. "There are things you need to see." They hiked up a winding trail that Marcus had noticed but never explored. After 20 minutes of climbing, Joseph stopped at the entrance to a cave system carved into the red rock face. "This is where my great-grandmother Ayana raised her children when the soldiers came," Joseph said, his voice filled with reverence. "She carved symbols into these walls that tell the story of our people's connection to this land." Marcus followed Joseph into the cave, using his phone's flashlight to illuminate the walls. Ancient petroglyphs covered the stone surfaces, depicting hunting scenes, family groups, and spiritual symbols that seemed to pulse with life in the flickering light. "These drawings are over 200 years old," Joseph explained. "They're not just art. They're a historical record of how my people lived and survived in this valley." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cave's cool temperature. He was standing in a place of profound historical and spiritual significance, and he finally understood why the Yazzie family was willing to fight so hard for this land. "Why are you showing me this?" Marcus asked. Joseph studied Marcus's face in the dim light. "Because you need to understand what you're really fighting for. This isn't just about property rights or money. This is about preserving a piece of human history that can never be replaced." They emerged from the cave into the bright desert sunlight, and Joseph led Marcus to a flat area overlooking the entire valley. From this vantage point, Marcus could see his ranch house, the cattle pastures, and the winding creek that provided water for the entire property. "My family has been watching over this valley for generations," Joseph said. "We've seen ranchers come and go, but the land remains. It was here before us, and it will be here long after we're gone." "Then why fight so hard to control it?" Marcus asked. Joseph smiled at the question. "We don't want to control it. We want to protect it. There's a difference." As they walked back down the trail, Joseph shared more stories about his family's history. He told Marcus about the forced relocations, the broken treaties, and the decades of legal battles that had brought them to this point. "Your uncle was a good man in many ways," Joseph said as they reached the ranch house. "He took care of the land, didn't overgraze the pastures or pollute the creek. But he never understood that ownership and stewardship are different things." That afternoon, Marcus received a phone call that changed everything. His lawyer in Phoenix had news about the federal investigation. "Marcus, I've been reviewing the documents the Bureau of Indian Affairs sent over," his lawyer said. "There's something you need to know about your uncle's purchase of that property." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "What kind of something?" "It appears the land was sold by the state of Arizona in 1998, but there's evidence that the sale violated federal treaties with the Apache Nation. Your uncle may have unknowingly purchased stolen property." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "What does that mean for me?" "If the federal investigation confirms the treaty violations, you could lose the property without any compensation. The land would revert to tribal control under federal law." After hanging up, Marcus sat in his kitchen staring at the legal documents spread across his table. Everything he'd worked for, everything he'd hoped to build, could disappear without a trace. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd lost his previous life to circumstances beyond his control, and now history was repeating itself. That evening, Elena, Maria, and Rosa arrived together, but this time they came bearing gifts instead of weapons. Elena carried a pot of traditional stew, Maria brought fresh bread, and Rosa had a bundle of desert sage. "We heard about your phone call," Elena said as Marcus invited them inside. News travels fast in small communities. Marcus was surprised by their gesture of kindness. "I thought you'd be celebrating." "There's no joy in watching someone lose everything," Maria said softly. "We know what that feels like." They shared dinner together, and for the first time since his arrival in Arizona, Marcus felt like he was part of a community. The Yazzie women told stories about their childhood in the valley, their struggles to preserve Apache traditions, and their dreams for the future. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said as they finished eating. "If you do get the land back, would there be any place in your plans for someone like me?" The three women exchanged glances before Elena answered. "Oh, what do you mean?" "I mean I've learned more about land stewardship in the past month than I did in my entire corporate career. Maybe there's a way I could contribute to your cultural center project instead of just walking away." Rosa, who had been silent through most of the evening, finally spoke up. "You would want to work with us after everything that's happened?" "I've been thinking about what Maria said, about finding a third option," Marcus replied. "Maybe the solution isn't about who owns the land, but about how we can work together to protect it." Elena leaned forward, clearly interested. "What are you proposing?" "I don't know yet," Marcus admitted, "but I'm willing to explore possibilities if you are." The conversation continued late into the night, with all four of them brainstorming ways to create a partnership that could benefit everyone involved. By the time the Yazzie women left, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years, hope for a future he couldn't have imagined when he first arrived at the ranch. 2 weeks later, Marcus received another call from his lawyer with unexpected news. The federal investigation had uncovered documents that changed everything. "Marcus, you're not going to believe this," his lawyer said, excitement clear in his voice. "We found the original treaty documents from 1876. Your property isn't on disputed land. It's on a section that was legally ceded to the United States government for homesteading." Marcus felt dizzy with relief. "Are you sure?" "Positive. The Bureau of Indian Affairs made an error in their initial assessment. Your uncle's purchase was completely legal. You have clear title to the property." After hanging up, Marcus sat in stunned silence. He'd won the legal battle, but the victory felt hollow. Over the past month, he'd come to understand the deep spiritual and cultural significance of the land to the Yazzie family. Legal ownership suddenly seemed less important than moral responsibility. That evening, he called Elena and asked if the family could meet with him. They gathered on his porch as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "I have news about the federal investigation," Marcus began, then explained what his lawyer had discovered. The Yazzie women listened in silence, their faces showing a mixture of disappointment and resignation. "So you're staying?" Rosa said flatly. "That depends," Marcus replied. "I want to make you an offer." He pulled out a folder containing documents he'd spent all day preparing with his lawyer's help. "I'm proposing to donate half of the property, including the cave system and the hills where your ancestors are buried, to the Apache Nation. The other half, including the ranch house and some grazing land, I'd like to keep." Eleanor's eyes widened in surprise. "You're serious?" "Completely serious, but there's more. I want to partner with you to develop the cultural center you've been dreaming about. I have business experience you could use, and you have cultural knowledge I need to learn." Maria leaned forward, studying the documents. "What would this partnership look like?" "We'd establish a non-profit organization to manage the cultural center and educational programs. I'd contribute the land and initial funding, while your family would provide the cultural expertise and community connections. We'd share decision-making authority equally." The three women huddled together, speaking in rapid Apache that Marcus couldn't understand. After several minutes of intense discussion, Eleanor turned back to him. "This is a generous offer, but we need time to discuss it with our tribal council and family elders." "Of course," Marcus said. "Take all the time you need." As the Yazzie women prepared to leave, Joseph Yazzie emerged from the shadows where he'd been quietly listening to the entire conversation. "You surprise me, Marcus Sullivan," the old man said, placing a weathered hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Your uncle fought us for 20 years, but you're offering to share what you could legally keep for yourself." "I've learned that some things are more valuable than legal ownership," Marcus replied. "This land has the power to heal old wounds and build new bridges. That seems more important than my personal financial security." Joseph nodded slowly, then did something unexpected. He removed his turquoise necklace and placed it around Marcus's neck. "This belonged to my great-grandfather," Joseph said. "It's a symbol of trust and partnership between our peoples. Wear it as a reminder that some bonds are stronger than law or money." 3 months later, Marcus stood at the entrance to the newly established Ayana Cultural Center, watching as Apache children learned traditional pottery techniques from their grandmothers. The cave system had been carefully preserved and converted into an interactive museum, while the valley floor hosted workshops on traditional farming and sustainable ranching practices. The partnership had faced numerous challenges, bureaucratic hurdles, funding shortfalls, and occasional disagreements about programming priorities. But through it all, Marcus and the Yazzie family had worked together to create something neither could have achieved alone. Eleanor approached him as he watched a group of teenagers learning to weave traditional baskets. "Any regrets?" she asked. Marcus considered the question seriously. His bank account was smaller, his life was more complicated, and his quiet retirement had become a bustling community center. But he'd never felt more fulfilled. "None," he said honestly. "This is exactly where I'm supposed to be." Maria joined them, carrying her infant son who had been born just 2 months earlier. She'd named him Marcus in honor of the partnership that had transformed all their lives. "The Tribal Council approved our proposal for the expanded education program," she announced. "We'll be able to offer college-level courses in Native American studies starting next fall." As the sun set over the valley, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. He'd come to Arizona looking for a quiet place to heal from his personal losses, but instead, he'd found a purpose that connected him to something larger than himself. The land dispute that had initially seemed like another devastating setback had become the catalyst for the most meaningful work of his life. By choosing partnership over possession, he discovered that true ownership wasn't about controlling something, but about caring for it in a way that honored both its past and its future. Rosa, now enrolled in college but still helping with the cultural center on weekends, walked over with a group of visitors from a nearby university. "Marcus, these professors want to discuss establishing a research partnership with our center," she said, her pride in the project evident in her voice. As Marcus welcomed the visitors and began explaining the center's mission, he realized that his story had become part of the land's continuing history. Future generations would learn about the white rancher and the Apache family, who chose cooperation over conflict, creating something beautiful from what could have been a bitter legal battle. The Ayana Cultural Center had become more than just a museum or educational facility. It was a living symbol of what was possible when people chose understanding over prejudice, partnership over possession, and healing over hatred. If this story of transformation and partnership has moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest stories of human resilience and hope. Comment below and tell us about a time when conflict in your own life led to unexpected opportunities for growth and connection. Don't forget to hit the like button to help us reach more people with these inspiring tales of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Your support means everything to us and helps us continue sharing stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Thank you for being part of our community.